The Sheikah are a race within The Legend of Zelda that often poses more questions than answers. This is a group that has been commonly referred to as the Shadow Folk, those that are under knowledgeable in the gritty underbelly of the history of The Legend of Zelda and Hyrule as a whole. Although the role of the Sheikah has greatly changed over the course of the last 30 years, the reality of the Sheikah remains that they are a group of unique individuals, often named the exact same thing, Impa. Now, if we just take a step back in time to the original Zelda, or even to the Oracle games, many of the Impas are depicted as elderly and are effectively just a attendant or a confidant of Zelda and or the royal family. This is, of course, because Nintendo, the creators of The Legend of Zelda, needed some form of exposition device, something that was meant to showcase or at least drive home that there was some form of story going on in the background. Be it collect the 8 shards of the Triforce of Wisdom, oh hey, Zelda's missing, we should go out and help her, or dare I say, simply explaining that the Dark Wizard Aghanim was in fact behind the disappearance of the various sages or multiple people throughout the realm of Hyrule. Now, there are a couple major differences and storyline situations that come up as a direct result of The Legend of Zelda's history changing as the games are released. One of them comes in the form of Ocarina of Time. Now, this is the first major design change as far as the Sheikah are concerned, with most of them prior to Ocarina of Time being depicted as elderly, while the ones depicted in the later stages of the franchise being depicted as ninja-like, at least that's the easiest way to describe it, and having a bit more of a Eastern culture as a direct result of their heritage and inspiration. Now, Impa in Ocarina of Time acts as the sole individual of the Sheikah tribe. We know there's more of them out there, but they operate more covertly compared to other groups within The Legend of Zelda. Well, you have some, like the Gorons, which are very brash, bold, get it done type of mentalities. You have other individuals like the Zoras that are very, how do I put it? The Zoras have a habit of letting things be, changing with the tides, so to speak. They do have the odd one that wants to get things done quickly, but they are brash in comparison to the rest of the Zora tribe, or the Zora clans as a whole. But the Sheikah, they've always been involved in some way, shape, or form with the Hyrule royal family. Impa acted as Zelda's attendant, her caretaker, and as a result was very intertwined with the story of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. What I like about this particular instance of this character is that it's about as multifaceted as it gets. Impa was the sole member of the clan, showcased many of the differences between a standard Hylian and the Sheikah, including their bright red eyes and their above average stature. But it also showcased the lengths they were willing to go to for the royal family as a whole when taking Zelda and effectively helping hide her from Ganondorf, not for a couple days or a week, but for 7 years. On top of this, we also end up with the later revelation that Impa was the Sage of Shadow. Now, there are some connections that could be made here between the Sheikah and the Shadow Temple, such as the fact that they are effectively they needed to get information somehow, and the Shadow Temple acted as a means of getting it. There are others that could point to the bottom of the well acting as a seal for a demonic monster called Bongo Bongo. Either way you look at it, Impa had a very, very um, consistent appearance as being somebody who was trustworthy, but also somebody who went well above and beyond any amount of strife or concern for the one that she followed. Now, the next major Impa we get is actually Impaz, or Impaz, from Twilight Princess. This individual was partially responsible for the storyline of the city in the sky, and how legends spoke of a city up there and how one could attain the power necessary to actually activate the statues to be able to access that realm. All of this is well and good, but overall this depiction is more in line with the older depiction. The difference being is that this showcases more of the stealth aspects of the Sheikah, being that they're from a sealed off hidden village. But I digress. The versions that we really want to dig into are from Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom. This is where things really start getting interesting. So, we know that Impa in Skyward Sword was a servant of the goddess, a very devout follower of Hylia, who sought to keep Hylia's goals to fruition, and went so far as to help the goddess reincarnate through the various trials of her age in order to make sure that the goals of Hylia prior to becoming a mortal were to be achieved. Impa, of course, is the more ninja-esque character at this point. Slightly stronger, taller than your average individual. She didn't necessarily have much in terms of capabilities when it came to weapons, but this version of Impa had something far more potent. And I believe this is something that tracks back to every future iteration of the Sheikah. And that's that they have a tie to the power of Hylia as a whole. I believe, in some capacity, that Skyward Sword's Impa was blessed by Hylia. This allows Impa to use magic that would be otherwise inaccessible for a human-esque individual. And I gotta love this particular aspect of the character. Because Impa, the first time you see her, she's, oh, the one you're searching for is just ahead. Follow the path, get to the top of the mountain, go quickly. It's very informational. It's very much about exposition like the original versions of the character. But as you see the character, you're witnessing magic beyond what you were expecting of that era. Opening portals, rifts in time, or shields strong enough to stop Girahim, the demon lord himself. All of this ties into Impa's incredible power, her devotion, and her magical prowess. And what adds even more to this is that Impa is one of the few characters capable of destroying a gate of time. Now, to be clear, there are only two true gates of time in Skyward Sword that we know of. The one in Faron Woods and the one in the Lanayru Desert. The desert one was destroyed by Impa. The Faron Woods one was partially rejuvenated by the Master Sword as a whole and kept running by Impa for X amount of time. The last piece that kind of ties into this is that Impa is well beyond the age of your average individual that comes across throughout this franchise. Most characters end up within the range of about that 30s to 50s range. Impa manages to survive for tens of thousands of years, simply to fulfill the goal and the mission that was left to her by the goddess Hylia herself. Again, this is something that comes up multiple times, specifically in Breath of the Wild. Now there are 120 shrines in the base version of the game. Each of these 120 shrines have a Sheikah monk, a dried up, disheveled, mummified version of a character that is effectively being held together by their sheer willpower. These individuals crop up across all of Hyrule in the shrines of the Sheikah's creation, because they've taken on a new role. See, prior to Breath of the Wild, the Sheikah were known as the ninjas. They were known as a secret society, with one or two odd characters that fit that description. But in Breath of the Wild, the Sheikah became a new clan, a new group, each of which were middle-aged, gray hair, red eyes, and a Eastern village motif in terms of their, shall we say, costume design. This all kind of ties together nicely, but the Sheikah monks exist as something older, much more primeval, shall we say. They don't have as many ties to modern necessities. I say modern in the form of, quotations here, because the Sheikah didn't really need modern amenities like other groups in the world did. Effectively, these individuals survived for centuries on the magic that was granted to them through Hylia, and upon completing what they believed to be their mission, they dissipated into a bluish-green light, gone from the series for good. These characters are effectively the epitome of do what it takes no matter the cost. Now, there are three more prominent Sheikah that crop up in Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom. These being Robbie, Hura, and Impa. Now, Impa is Hura's older sister, I believe? I believe so. Anyways, Impa is the elderly of the two. She was the attendant of Zelda back 100 years prior, during the battles that led to the calamity as a whole. Impa was the one that witnessed the fall of Hyrule in its entirety that day. The character herself is devoted to the Hyrule royal family in ways that I don't think many others would be. She focused a lot of her time, energy, and effort into helping guide Zelda to become into her true power, that being the power of Hylia, the goddess herself. And in many ways, Impa did what she could. And in many ways, I believe that she more or less failed. It wasn't until an act of sheer desperation that Zelda was able to uncover her power. But that never stopped Impa from being involved and directly. How do I put this? Impa was always involved in directly helping Zelda through every stage of her journey, with the chosen knight in tow. This is just part of what the character does, and part of why she works so well as a character as a whole. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, from the devotion and the, shall we say, ninja-esque role, the attendant role, we have Robbie and Pura. Robbie and Pura are the most zany, wacky Sheikah that have ever been created.
The history of the royal family of Hyrule is also the history of Calamity Ganon, a primal evil that has endured over the ages. This evil has been turned back time and time again by a warrior wielding the soul of a hero and a princess who carries the blood of the goddess. With the passage of time, each conflict with Ganon faded into legend. So listen closely as I tell you of this legend that occurred 10,000 years ago. Hyrule was then blossoming as a highly advanced civilization. Even the most powerful monsters posed little threat to the denizens of the realm. The people thought it wise to utilize their technological prowess to ensure the safety of the land should Calamity Ganon ever return. They constructed 4 mechanical wonders that came to be known as the Divine Beasts. They also built a legion of autonomous weapons called Guardians. The Divine Beasts were piloted by 4 individuals of exceptional skill from across the land. And thus, the plan to neutralize Ganon was forged. Upon Ganon's inevitable return to Hyrule, the princess and the hero fought alongside these 4 champions against this ancient evil. The Guardians were tasked with protecting the hero as the Divine Beasts unleashed a furious attack upon their terrible foe. And when the hero wielding the sword that seals the darkness delivered his final blow, the princess used her sacred power to seal away Calamity Ganon.
These two are effectively the exact opposite of Impa, where Impa focuses more in on her personal skills, focuses in on tradition. These two push the boundaries of what could happen in the future. And so Robbie and Pura are inventors. And this is showcased in every aspect of their character, in terms of creating, in the case of Robbie, a machine capable of synthesizing ancient materials into new tools, like the ancient arrows, the blade saw, which don't think too heavy about the fact that he effectively gives Link a chainsaw, but there's that. Every single time that Robbie and Purah got involved, there was something more about technology involved in the discussion. And while Zelda as a whole is not necessarily foreign to technology, as it shows up in numerous games across the franchise, like Wind Waker's Tower of the Gods, which ironically also has the shape of a Sheikah shrine. Don't think too heavily on that just yet. But they have so much more to their character. These two are all about research, history, and continued growth for all of Hyrule. Not just the oddball, I suppose, weird characters that you can find once in a blue moon that are shoved in for comedy relief. They are actively trying to uncover the mysteries of of the shrines as a whole, the magic that powers the shrines and the various blue flames across Hyrule. But they're also trying to uncover the secrets of the divine beasts. They are trying to uncover secrets of past technology, history, and everything under the sun. These characters are much more devoted to a global cause than they were the Hyrule family. And ironically, I find that's actually why I find these two characters so endearing. While other Sheikah have been devoted to one task or another, effectively being tied to Hylia and the family of the kingdom as a whole, they never really had a whole lot of growth. They didn't have a whole lot of change. Whereas Robbie and Purah, edit that out later there, Nova. Robbie and Purah had the audacity to be bigger, think broader than they had previously, just simply because they could. How does one beat aging? You create a new machine, a new serum, that effectively reverses the aging process altogether, and effectively turn yourself from a wrinkled old lady back to a child. Yeah, okay, you need footstools to see your desk again, but you now know you have another 100 years to work on and perfect your craft. It would not be hard to assume that Purah could effectively be the first truly immortal character in the entire franchise at this point, because of the scientific discoveries that she has made. Now, stepping a little bit further into the new games. Now, I'll be the first to admit it. I have not beaten Echoes of Wisdom. Need to, want to, haven't got that far. But Echoes of Wisdom version of the Sheikah have, ironically, much the same roles as they had prior. You had the older lady version of Impa that acted as the exposition character, but much more involved than in past iterations. When Zelda was seen as a traitor, Impa got involved and was more than happy to throw hands because that was what Zelda needed in that moment. And her partner in crime, Blueberry. Blueberry is trying to discover or uncover the power of I want to call it the mystic energy that is caused by the rifts. This energy as a whole is not necessarily as potent or powerful as the magic that is seen in Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom, but it does seem to have a lot more potential than the games seem to let on for a lot of it. This is just halfway through the game ponderings. But to me, it looks like there is more to this. Now, I had mentioned that Skyward Sword Impa was at an incredibly advanced age. Timeless, if you will, and depicted as such, even with her braid acting as a pendulum to her grandfather clock. The Sheikah in Breath of the Wild have an uncanny ability to effectively surpass the limitations of what would be normal for a hylian in the form of their longevity. Impa is probably about 120. 125, let's be clear. Robbie and Purah are probably in their 120s as well. And both of them are incredibly spry by comparison. Impa in Tears of the Kingdom creates a hot air balloon and is traveling from one end of the world to the other in order to discover the source of these strange glyphs that have shown up across the world. Robbie is learning how, or is adventuring through the depths, if my memory serves accurately. And you have Purah, who's trying to piece it all together while using bits of the ancient technology of the Sheikah from their prior wars, their prior battles, in order to create new technology and grow on what has and can be possible with what they currently know. In no short order do I believe that the Sheikah are as instrumental for the franchise as as Link and Zelda themselves. If it was not for the Sheikah, their unwavering confidence and push, their drive to the future, I do not believe that Hyrule would be anywhere near the capabilities that it's in the later stages of its world development as a whole. But what do you think? Maybe I'm rambling on something that need not be rambled on. I'd love to hear your depictions, your thoughts in the comments below, because honestly, there might be something I'm missing in its entirety. Let me know.